community building essentially is what it sounds like it is what most of you are doing. And so I wanted to know, what about programs that are developing, that we've been working with other outfits beyond our college, like the Center for Entrepreneurship, like the Teacher Ed program, where, I mean, how do you see our students who are women and gender studies majors, for example, GLBTQ minors, what could they get out of the fact that we're developing these programs with you?
Sure. From the Entrepreneurship Center, I passed out this flyer, and if somebody didn't get one, I can give it to you afterwards. But this is just some information about our program. We're offering a certificate program now, which is three credit courses, and then we'll be ramping up to a minor and a major. The center just opened in January when my boss started here, and I came in June. But what we're finding from talking to, and the most important thing to know is the center is a resource for the entire campus, even though we're housed in the business school. And we started our first class this fall. It's called the Entrepreneurial Mindset and Innovation. It's a basic introductory class. And in that class, less than a third are business school students. The rest are from all over the campus, every other type of major that you can imagine. There is a women and gender studies student in that class. And what we found from meeting over the summer with various department chairs outside the business school is they found this attractive for their students, because they sometimes hear, or the students hear from parents or whoever, well, what are you going to do with a sociology major, or women and gender studies major, or psychology major, or anything like that. And so what we feel is that having this certificate, it gives you some real world background and business skills without having to take a full-fledged business minor or get a business degree, so that you can kind of marry, in this case, your love of studying women and gender studies, but get then some practical experience that might help you for getting a job. So say one day you want to be like Lil or Stephanie and open a social service organization like that. You'd have these skills and experience that would help you do that, which you might not be getting from whatever else you're majoring in. And because if you want, the important thing to know with this entrepreneurship program is it is for social entrepreneurs also. It's not just for people that want to go into a for-profit venture. So obviously this program's great if you know, hey, I have this great app idea, or I have this product that I know I want to design and sell. But it's also good if you want to do some type of social service job and open a business someday. Or if you think, well, I don't want to be my own boss at all, that sounds too daunting or too time consuming. This is also just great for it to teach you kind of the entrepreneurial mindset and how to be more creative. And on the back of this flyer too is an event we're having. It's a panel of real estate women, but I kind of tried to also get across the point on the flyer. This would be a great event to attend if you think you might ever be working in a more male-dominated industry. Real estate is incredibly male-dominated, so the women will talk about that, of how do you, if you're a woman, how do you succeed in an industry where it's mostly all men around you, so that might be helpful. But last thing I'll say about the center too, it was created with a donation from Mimi Feliciano along with her husband, but she was really the driving force. And a key component was she wants to be more, she wanted the center to be nurturing and developing women entrepreneurs. So that is a tenet of the center. That's why we have events like this, that it's a panel of real estate women. The event's obviously open to men too, but we really are trying to increase the number of women entrepreneurs. That's a main goal of the center.
Great.
And we'll be, and as Fawzia said earlier, we're working on partnering with her department to make, cross-list classes. We want to eventually have a women's entrepreneurs class. And so that's some stuff that is just starting to get up and running and that we're working on.
So thank you. So let me ask, what can men get? This is, we want to create a world, right, which is where we give women the opportunities that they need and still need even today, right, to sort of come up to speed in some way, or to have the opportunities that are not given to them, or to overcome a lot of the obstacles that the gender and sexuality barriers place on them, or race and class combined. But what about men? Men who could be here, many of them wondering, why am I here? Why should I take a class in women and gender studies? Why should I care about women entrepreneurs? Why should I You know, I don't know, Salu, maybe with your background from thinking about counseling, maybe is it men need counseling?
You all need counseling. Yeah, I mean, I think women are half the population. Men will enjoy, I think, a much more fulfilling life when women are empowered, when women are able to contribute. I think all of us benefit certainly from women being allowed to have opportunities. I think men coming to gender studies gives them a unique perspective in that they're not only able to see the world through a male perspective, but they're also able to see how some of those privileges and oppressions that have been set up in systems, that they're able to look at how it affects women and what their roles can be to kind of maybe, you know, topple those systems or maybe start to create change within those systems. So I think a man who's interested in gender studies can certainly do a lot for society and for humanity, and for his own mental health as a counselor.
For me specifically, one of the most amazing volunteers that we have on the campaign is a little 13-year-old young man who's really, really amazing. He had his sister intern during the summer. His name is Dante, and Dante is just a rock star. He's a total powerhouse. He gets on the phones and he gets people who are really unsure, like, do you support same-sex marriage? I don't know. To really just hone in, do you think your legislator should go ahead and vote for same-sex marriage? I mean, he's just so focused, and it's because he's seeing this change all around him, and it's just ingrained in his being. And just being in that environment really, I think, allows Dante to see the world through this really different lens at such a young age, to then be that agent of change that goes out into the world and then, you know, spreads his branches out and spreads this message. I think realistically, being a part of this action, being a part of what we're doing as organizations and as studies, really puts this context of action into the world. It's giving you the tools to be able to have these types of conversations. I have conversations every day around what marriage means to people, and how this fits into this context of gender and sexuality, and the way that those conversations really work in the real world. You have the tools here, and then you have to go out and do it. And the going out and doing it takes constant reassessment. It takes constant reevaluation of what exactly we're doing. And having those tools in those toolbox makes it so much easier. And I actually didn't preface this. I was actually a freshman here in 2001.
Okay.
And yeah,
Cool.
and so being able to have that context, have that ability to understand this work, allows me to do the work in a really genuine way.
And to feel the excitement that
Yeah.
we're actually contributing to real
Exactly.
important change,
Yeah.
right? Which is very
I think
exciting.
the important thing is though I want to tell you this is true. Sex is better when men date feminists. That's true. There's some research that says egalitarian relationships have the best sex, the most satisfied sex partners on both sides. So I think that's a main reason why men.
When I was in college,
Right,
when I was in college, I started taking women and gender studies classes, and I was dating my husband. And I told him, if you want this relationship to work, you really need to come and take this class. And I have to tell you, he did, and you know, be married for 25 years together, for 32, you know, it paid off.
And feminists, you know, they have really thrown off the shackles and said, screw all these rules that we're supposed to live by. We're much better. We're
Without-
looser about our sexuality, so go
Right.
for it, guys.
Charity, you were going to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that in the education realm, we have a problem with the overrepresentation of males in special education. And there's a lot of research about that disproportionate overrepresentation being directly tied to not having enough male elementary teachers who understand gender and what it's like to be a boy in school. And so it's not only a gender issue, but it's the overrepresentation of African American and minority males in schools. And so again, there's this intersection going on constantly with race, class, gender, and it's something that now there's a lot of emerging research about retention in males at the college level. So there's constantly, I think, these issues coming up not only in education but in our culture that we have to kind of be more attuned to.
I think I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think one of the misconceptions I think that a lot of students also have about a program such as the Women and Gender Studies program is they hear women, but they don't hear the gender part of it, right? So they think, well, it's by women, for women, and only for women, and what do we have to do with it? And they feel that they're going to get lectures on how oppressed women are by men, and it's just that one very narrow way of thinking about these, as you're pointing out, really interlocking, intersecting, complex issues, right? That define our identities, which are evolving all the time. They're changing. We're not all heterosexual. We're not. Some of us are not even gay and lesbian. Some of us are transgender. So when you look at the broad spectrum of sexualities and genders as we're beginning to understand them now in our moment, it seems to me that having those lenses, right, which is really what classes in programs like Women and Gender Studies or GLBTQ Studies can provide our students, is to think beyond narrow identifications of this is what it means to be a man, or this is what it means to be a woman. And if you open it up, then you can do so much more in the world, right? Otherwise, you're very imprisoned in a very sort of one-track way of thinking. Yeah.
You know, like you said earlier about changing what we don't like, and it's, you know, through education that we start to realize when oppressed people are successful, we are all successful. Mm-hmm. So it has to not be this continual this versus this. And if the men do well, the women can't. We can all do well, and it has to happen that we have a lot of the privileged people learn how to speak out for the oppressed.
Right.
Because we'll all benefit.
And I mean, I think the other thing that seems like we, you know, and I'm going to ask Shannon maybe to say a word about that, is you're interested in global feminisms, as am I. So where does the sort of beyond the US piece, how does that come into a class or coursework around, and then practical work in the field for people who are interested in issues around women and gender empowerment?
I will certainly start it, but then I'm going to hand it over to the two women I was talking to earlier who are actually doing work in Africa. Again, we are a globalized world, and that can mean good things in terms of sharing information and sharing technologies and medical technologies and things like that. And it can mean some very dire things, particularly for women around the world. And so if we want to think of ourselves as creating peace and justice, I don't understand why, and the students in my classes don't understand why that wouldn't apply globally. Like we around the world, I think. And so before I get too idealistic, I think the practical
Yes.
questions should be addressed by people who are actually working in this.
Right. And how do we avoid, in that context, from a Western classroom perspective, a knee-jerk reaction to always think that we have the answers, and women and men in other parts of the world maybe don't have the answers, or not as good of an answer as we do? I don't know if either one of you, Salome, Stephanie,
Yeah, I think also part of that is how do we look at the issue of feminism, you know, from sort of a Western perspective and a global South perspective. So this idea of oftentimes in the West, when we look at feminism, there's a great focus around patriarchy, right? Mm-hmm. So women from the global South, for who are looking at the idea of feminism or gender equity, they're looking at more from other perspectives of, you know, does a child have access to education? Am I safe to go if there's a war that's going to be starting? Where's my safety? You know, can I live on $1 a month? So all of these issues that
have access to clean water.
Access to clean water. So these are all things that are more important oftentimes for women who are sort of from an international or sort of global or global South perspective, in that this whole idea of patriarchy isn't really that important, or the only issue, or even sexuality for that point. Mm-hmm. And so I think when we're looking at feminism and we're kind of looking at gender equity and we're looking at women's issue around the world, it's very important that we look at all those different lenses that women come through.
Great, thank you. Stephanie, something from your experience maybe?
I think specifically hearing from voices from the specific communities and countries where these issues are taking effect, I think is the most important thing. So we're not coming in from a Western perspective and saying this is what's good for you or this is what we think you should be doing. I think it's definitely hearing all of their stories and everything that they feel is necessary and needed within their community, and then assisting with that, I think, is how it should start, as opposed to here's what we think you should do. I think is important.
Excellent. Great. Yes.
I think now is a really good time to highlight the importance of study abroad if you haven't thought about it already. Who's a freshman or sophomore? What are we looking at here?
Sophomore.
Who's thinking of studying abroad? Okay, cool. So there is a program. I was the first person from Montclair to go on the International Perspectives on Gender and Sexuality program that Montclair affiliates with in Amsterdam. I know you're getting Amsterdam's perspective, but I also got to go to Morocco for 2 weeks. It was insane culture shock compared to Amsterdam, which is compared to New York City most of the time. But even if you don't go on a program specifically for these issues, you can always bring in these issues and the lenses that we keep mentioning into whatever you're doing, into business track, into something with mathematics, education, history, what have you. So it looks so good to learn globally and to actually put yourself somewhere else in the world besides where you are now, because there's no way of experiencing what someone else is experiencing until you're actually in it and you're living it. I definitely suggest you look into it and go to the Global Ed Center and start doing research. And it always works with the majors and minors. I got my entire, basically, WMGS and GLBTQ minors done last semester. I took 16 credits, so it's possible. And I got to do research, which was really fun.
Very cool.
You didn't sleep.
I didn't sleep. I really didn't sleep.
So we have about 10 minutes left for the class period to be over, and then we're hoping that many of you will still be able to stay back and take advantage of the fact that we have these wonderful people here who can share with you some of the work that they do. If you're interested in finding out more about that, some of them who are representing organizations, you can ask them for their literature, maybe ask them about internship or job opportunities. So we're going to allow for a little time, for you to mingle with them on a one-to-one level, in a one-to-one way. But before we sort of get to that, I just wanted to ask, and I don't know, Carmen, you had some questions about jobs or careers? Or?
What words of wisdom would you offer the students that's about to graduate?
What to look for?
What to look for?
Well, I had some thoughts, of course. I just, so many of the things that everyone talked about are important. I know this doesn't answer that question, but you were talking about patriarchy, and one of the things that I found is everyone's really great at talking about the equality, and this is the church's fault, the religious institution's fault, but then we walk into our communities of faith, and I have a sign on my office door that says, God is not a boy's name. And so we walk into these community of faith, and the reason I'm bringing this up because I think that it's systemic. I think it's part of why we are able to then demean women and girls around the world. And that is we walk to our communities of faith, and what do we call God? Father. We use He, King, Lord. So long as we continue to look at whatever divine being that you have and use all male language around that's separating women and girls a step back from God. When you ask people in a Christian context, how were women made, they always say what? From the rib of Adam? They forget about the first part. In the first chapter of Genesis, it says, we created them in our image, male and female, together at the same time. First of all, who's our? So what I would ask all of you is to push back against this. It's critical. The religious institutions have to start using, we're starting to do it a lot, language inclusive, our mother, our father, talking in terms of the divine feminine. But if we don't start doing that, then all the stuff that you do out in the world is great, and then you walk in on Sunday or Saturday or whenever it is that you worship, and you're basically saying women are less than. So
push back against these institutions and really work towards that. And I know that didn't answer your question,
But it was
I
an
really
important
wanted to
thing,
shout
yes, very important point, and I would just add to that, that I think that's what your message resonates with. I would say it's all communities of faith, right, where it's the same problem, you know, thinking about what's happening, for example, in the Muslim world, that it's so dangerous and it affects all of us because part of what's resurgent in the Muslim world is a kind of way of thinking which is very woman unfriendly and ultimately man unfriendly too. You see, the two things are so interconnected.
Well, and also the leadership in the churches, and I still get stares in wearing the collar, mostly because I'm female. Because when people see me, there's no way to know whether I partner with women or men. And I just had lunch with a Roman Catholic woman priest the other day, one of the 300 irregularly ordained women in the Roman Catholic Church that are fighting against of that. So it's still a long fight. There are still churches I will not be welcomed into as a leader, and so there's still a long way to go. But in all the faith institutions, and since many people are people of faith, whatever that faith is, it's still going to you know, affect us in ways that we don't even realize. And just think about it for a second. If you don't think it affects you, and I hear a lot of women saying, I don't mind calling God Father, it's okay, I don't mind it. So I said, well, all right, Elizabeth Johnson once said, let's change it. All women imagery for the next 2,000 years, just to balance it out. Just to balance it out. Try it one day. Try going through your whole day just talking about God in terms of all
you see how entrenched that is.
See how it because I have to admit it, I'm a feminist, and the first time I did it, it was weird. And then I had to really think about that, and think about what does that say about me, and what I really believe as a feminist. So
it's wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Charity, yes, and we would love for people to also just talk about, as we end, about words of encouragement or wisdom or guidance for students who are either in the major already or hopefully after today want to explore joining the program. Where do you think they can go with a degree in women and gender studies?
Well, I think just like starting college is such an exciting time, it's also a scary time, and I think graduation is very much like that too, because things are planned in a certain extent, but then it's this whole new phase. And so I think it's a really exciting time, but I think if graduating, if one stays focused on service and how can I serve well, and are constantly looking for opportunities to serve in little or small or large ways, those are the things that tend to open up as opportunities to more, to greater opportunities. Because I think coming out of college is hard because the first job or two out is never the ideal job. You know, but oftentimes our expectation levels about what is after college, because I work with graduate students so often and students coming back for graduate degrees, those first few years I think are such pivotal times to explore and truly do in an experimental way some of the things that we've all wondered about and wanted to try. And I think that's really such a special thing because ultimately, you know, the first job out is never what you're going to end at because it's such a journey. And so building the network, whether it be through the panel, through the students in the program, the professors, and beyond, are the best ways in which to create those little opportunities to serve and have things grow. And I wish I could be more tangible, but I wouldn't want to be tangible because it's everywhere and it's in all business, ed, community, you know, it's in all of those things that we kind of create that.
As a person who's like more in age relative to you, is the idea of, and that was not meant. It wasn't ageist at all, I promise. In terms of actually exploring work and being in it, and this is, you know, very new to work to me, is to be open. I think all of us come through, you know, go through college, student myself, and want this very particular thing. And we don't even know what that particular thing looks like until we actually do it. Until we're actually in there. And most people are like, I don't really like this so much. And try to do something else. Let your internal compass, let the thing that you really are passionate about guide you. Because you can always find really great work in that thing that you're passionate about. The only difference is if you're not passionate about it, you're going to be miserable. You will be absolutely miserable every day that you go into work. It's really, really important that the thing that you're passionate about, you'll always be able to find great work in. And the thing that you're being led by is by your internal sense of passion and your internal sense of being. And when that's fulfilled, doesn't matter what paycheck you get at the end of the day, it really is about the work you're doing and what you're giving back to the world. That's really super important.
Last comment goes to Carolina, and then I'm going to wrap it up.
I was just going to say that I think sometimes it's very intimidating when you see a panel full of people that may have their PhDs and their master's degrees. And I remember sitting here because I was doing the job that an assistant for what Viviana is doing. And I remember thinking, oh my God, wrong major, like I'm never gonna find a job. All these people have PhDs and master's degrees. Everything that I achieved was without my master's degree. I just got the master's degree now. And so it's important, just like Allie was saying, I think it's Allie, that she said something in class and the professor was like, I need to talk to you. Don't be afraid to like cause a ruckus because people will remember you. They will remember your name, they'll remember your face. And just like Lil was saying too, with like the volunteering, I volunteered everywhere, whether it was for like an hour somewhere, but I tried to get like my foot in the door and like my face in their face so that they would remember me and they would know like, yeah, I don't have the master's degree. No, I've never had a job in domestic violence, but I'm gonna be great at this. I promise you. And I got my first domestic violence job without having any DV experience, without having the master's degree that they wanted me to have. But the person took a chance on me because I sold myself as the best candidate out there. And it's unique to have your BA, whether it's minor or major, in women's studies or in women's and gender studies, because people don't see that a lot. And I feel like that sort of grabs their attention. So to study abroad, because I did study abroad and I got a lot of interviews because people asked me about my study abroad and about the women's studies. So
that's just wonderful. Everything that each one of you brought to this wonderful table was so inspiring, really, and I truly mean that. It's rare to get such a diverse group of people together and having so much to contribute, to make us think. I hope all of you are going to walk away with a lot of ideas. Really very grateful to all of you for taking this time to come to us. Just, you know, as a sort of final observation from everything that I've heard today from you, is to think, you know, and to share this and to throw it out to all of you gathered here, is that whether you end up becoming a teacher, right, something very concrete that certainly one can get from combining a women and gender studies degree with a teacher ed certificate, or you end up, you know, getting a certificate in entrepreneurship and go on to developing your own business, whether it's for profit or nonprofit, like the Masakani Center that you have, or Shelter Our Sisters, or organization that you work with. It's what I've heard from all of you is that it's about service and having passion, right? The passion for something that really is meaningful to you, to want to change the things that you don't like about the way men and women maybe relate to each other still, or the opportunities that are given to them based on a very narrow perception of what their gender or sexuality is, to change the relationships between us, to make sure that people of all sexualities, whether they're lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, that everybody should have the same opportunities to succeed and to give back, right? To give back to the communities that we come from, and to change the way that we think, whether it's in the church or in the mosque or in the synagogue or wherever, so that we can become people who are tolerant and make a better world. That's what it seems to me that the work that we're doing here is all about, and all of you, each one of you spoke to that beautifully and with a great deal of commitment. So thank you all for coming and being a wonderful audience. We will have them here. We're going to hold them hostage for a little while longer, so please come and talk to them, take their business cards, take some of their literature, ask your questions.
There's a biography, everyone's extended biography is in the back with their contact information, so if you want to see like their full journey of what they've done and want to contact them, someone said something that really sparked something in you, please take those in the back.
And I just wanted to add, probably not thinking about that right now. I never thought about it. There are amazing careers in higher education, amazing career opportunities. You can get your education paid for if you work for a particular institution. And it's something that we don't talk about. It's a secret, but there's my email address is there. I'm an academic advisor if you wanted to explore the possibility, but it's a great career options. And you know what? I've been in education for 25 years at the higher ed, and I loved it, and I would have never thought in college that I would, with a political science degree, end up where I am today. So.
Yes, absolutely. Here, here, I second that. Thank you, everybody. Thank you all. Thank you so much. Thank you.